The silence was deafening. If you've ever watched someone you care about slowly fade into a shadow of themselves, you know that particular kind of helplessness that grips your chest. It's not dramatic like in the movies, no screaming, no grand gestures, just a slow, quiet dimming of the light behind their eyes. And right now, that's exactly what's happening to Maurice Sam, one of Nollywood's brightest stars, and the entire industry is watching in real time, hearts collectively breaking. Have you ever seen someone smile but felt their sadness? That's Maurice right now, and honestly, it's hitting different because this isn't just celebrity gossip, this is a masterclass in how heartbreak can literally transform a human being into someone you barely recognize. Hey there, LOLET me remind you movie lovers and celebrity gist seekers. If you're new to our channel, you're in for a ride filled with the hottest Nollywood and Hollywood buzz, exclusive updates, and jaw-dropping celebrity drama. Everything started spiraling after that emotional earthquake between Maurice Sam and Sonia Uch that had the internet in chokehold for weeks. You remember it, right? The tears, the cryptic posts, the deafening silence that spoke volumes louder than any interview ever could. Fans were literally refreshing their Instagram feeds every 5 minutes like they were waiting for exam results, hoping for some sign that their favorite on-screen couple would work things out. But instead of reconciliation, we got something even more heartbreaking. We got to watch a man slowly crumble under the weight of unspoken pain while trying to maintain his professional dignity. And just when we thought the dust had settled and maybe, just maybe, Maurice was healing quietly, Ruth Codri dropped a bombshell that sent shockwaves through Nollywood and had every single person who's ever loved and lost feeling personally attacked. Ruth Codri, the veteran actress and filmmaker who has shared countless sets with Maurice over the years, sat down for what seemed like a regular interview about her latest project. Nobody expected what came next. With the kind of concern that only comes from genuine friendship, Ruth looked directly at the camera and said something that made every viewer's heart skip a beat: Maurice is not the same anymore. The spark we all knew is gone. Just like that. No sugarcoating, no dancing around the truth, just raw honesty that hit like a punch to the gut. The interviewer visibly paused, probably thinking the same thing we all were: did she really just say that on camera? But Ruth wasn't being malicious or trying to expose her colleague for clout. If anything, her eyes carried the weight of someone who has watched a friend suffer and couldn't stay silent anymore. The internet absolutely exploded. Within minutes, the clip was everywhere: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook groups dedicated to Nollywood gossip were working overtime. Comment sections turned into virtual town halls where everyone suddenly became a relationship expert, psychologist, and life coach all at once. What does she mean the spark is gone? People typed furiously, their fingers probably smoking from the speed. Is Maurice sick? Is he depressed? Did Sonia break him that badly? The speculations ranged from reasonable concern to absolutely wild theories that would make even the most dramatic Nollywood script seem tame. Some people suggested Maurice might be dealing with a secret illness, others thought maybe he'd been spiritually attacked, because apparently, that's still a thing people seriously consider, and the more practical folks wondered if he was simply going through what any normal human experiences after a devastating heartbreak, except his heartbreak had millions of witnesses. Now, to understand why Ruth's statement carried so much weight, you need to know the history between her and Maurice. These two aren't just industry colleagues who smile for the camera at premieres and go their separate ways. Ruth Codri has directed Maurice in multiple projects, and in previous interviews, she's always described him with such warmth and admiration. She called him disciplined, humble, incredibly creative, and someone who brings positive energy to every set he walks onto. She once said working with Maurice felt like walking with sunshine, that's how radiant his presence used to be. So for the same Ruth Codri to now say publicly that something fundamental has changed in him, that the essence of who Maurice Sam was seems to have dimmed or disappeared entirely, that's not gossip. That's a distress signal from someone who knows him well enough to recognize when something is seriously wrong. Ruth didn't just drop that statement and move on like it was casual conversation. She elaborated in a way that made everyone watching feel like they were eavesdropping on a deeply personal conversation. She said you could see it in his eyes, and isn't that the most haunting thing? Because eyes don't lie, do they? You can fake a smile, you can pretend your voice is steady, you can even convince people with your words that you're fine, but your eyes will betray you every single time. Ruth explained that when she looks at Maurice now, she sees someone who's physically present but emotionally somewhere else entirely, battling demons that nobody else can see or understand. It's like watching someone slowly drown in the middle of a crowded room while everyone assumes they're just swimming differently. The behavioral changes Ruth described painted an even more concerning picture of Maurice's current state. Apparently, the Maurice Sam who used to light up film sets with his jokes and infectious laughter has been replaced by someone almost unrecognizable. Cast and crew members have noticed the dramatic shift. The man who used to be the first to arrive and the last to leave, who would crack jokes between takes and make everyone feel comfortable, has become withdrawn and isolated. He still shows up, still delivers his lines with professional precision, but the warmth is gone. One crew member, speaking anonymously because obviously nobody wants to be accused of gossiping about a hurting colleague, described the current Maurice as professional but cold. Imagine that, going from being the heart of every production to being described as cold. That's not just sad, that's alarming because it suggests something has fundamentally shifted in his spirit. But it gets even more heartbreaking, and honestly, if you're the type who cries during emotional movie scenes, you might want to grab some tissues for this part. During a recent film shoot that Ruth Codri was directing, something happened that left everyone on set shaken. They were filming what should have been a routine emotional scene, the kind Maurice has done 100 times before without breaking character. But this time, something went wrong. Midway through the scene, Maurice suddenly stopped acting. Not the kind of stop where you forget your lines or need a moment to reset, this was different. His eyes filled with tears that had nothing to do with the script, and before anyone could react, he quietly walked off set. The entire crew stood frozen, not knowing whether to follow him or give him space. And the words he said as he walked away. I am fine. Just remembering something I shouldn't. If that doesn't break your heart into a million pieces, check your pulse because you might be a robot. That incident on Ruth's set became the talk of Nollywood, but it was discussed in hushed tones, with genuine concern rather than malicious gossip. People who have worked in the industry for years said they'd never seen Maurice like that, so vulnerable, so obviously struggling to separate his personal pain from his professional responsibilities. And here's the thing about being an actor dealing with heartbreak, your job literally requires you to access emotions and portray love stories while your own heart is shattered. Imagine having to act out romantic scenes, deliver lines about love and devotion, and pretend everything is beautiful when internally you're barely holding yourself together. That's the reality Maurice has been living, and it's starting to show cracks in ways that can't be hidden anymore. Ruth Codri, being the thoughtful person she is, took to Instagram shortly after that interview aired, and her post sent fans into another frenzy of speculation and concern. She wrote, "Strong men don't cry out loud, but their silence can be louder than a scream," followed by a broken heart emoji. Now, she didn't mention Maurice by name, but come on, the timing, the context, the fact that everyone had just watched her interview talking about him. Fans and detectives, but they don't need to be to connect those dots. The comment section became a mixture of prayer emojis, crying faces, and lengthy paragraphs from people sharing their own experiences with silent suffering. Some people wrote about watching their fathers, brothers, or partners quietly break down while society expected them to man up and deal with it silently. The response from fans online was overwhelming in its intensity and diversity. Maurice's Instagram, which he's been posting on less and less frequently, became flooded with messages of support, love, and encouragement. People wrote essays in the comments about how heartbreak doesn't discriminate, how even the strongest people can be brought to their knees by emotional pain, how it's okay to not be okay. Others got angry, not at Maurice, but at the situation, at heartbreak itself, at the universe for allowing someone so seemingly wonderful to suffer so visibly. And of course, because this is the internet and nuance sometimes gets lost in translation, there were also people who immediately blamed Sonia Uch, calling her heartless and cruel, which honestly isn't fair because breakups are complicated and we don't know the full story. People who've encountered Maurice recently at events or seen him around Lagos have corroborated Ruth's observations in ways that make the situation feel even more real and immediate. They describe a man who still maintains his professionalism, who's polite and courteous, who poses for pictures when asked and says the right things in brief conversations. But they also note that something essential is missing. His smile, which used to be this genuine, full-faced expression of joy that made everyone around him feel good, now barely reaches his cheeks, let alone his eyes. It's the kind of smile people wear like armor, functional, protective, but ultimately hollow. One fan who met him at a movie premiere said it was like meeting a well-dressed ghost of Maurice Sam rather than the actual person, and that description is so haunting it deserves its own Netflix documentary. Then Sonia Uch, who had been maintaining her own strategic silence throughout this entire saga, made a statement that felt like she was pouring salt directly into Maurice's wounds while the whole world watched. At a recent event where she was looking absolutely stunning, because apparently looking good is the best revenge, a reporter asked her about second chances in love, a question that was obviously loaded and probably designed to get exactly the kind of soundbite it produced. Sonia, cool as ice, replied, "Some stories don't need a sequel." The lesson was the closure. Drop the mic, cue the dramatic music, watch as the internet collectively gasps. Whether she meant it as a direct message to Maurice or was just answering generally, the damage was done. Fans immediately interpreted this as Sonia's final, definitive rejection of any possibility of reconciliation with Maurice. The public reaction to Sonia's comment was swift and divided right down the middle like a perfectly split watermelon at a summer picnic. One camp immediately went on the attack, calling Sonia cold-hearted and insensitive, questioning how she could make such a statement knowing that Maurice was clearly struggling. This Team Maurice supporters flooded her social media with comments ranging from disappointed to downright aggressive, accusing her of publicly humiliating a man who obviously still cared about her. But there was another camp, Team Sonia, if you will, who defended her right to move on and set boundaries. They argued that just because Maurice is hurting doesn't mean Sonia is obligated to get back together with him or soften her stance to protect his feelings. They pointed out that we don't know what happened in their relationship, what he might have done, or why she feels so strongly about not revisiting that chapter. Ruth Codri, watching all of this unfold like the rest of us but with insider knowledge that made it even more painful, reportedly had more to say backstage at another event. According to people who overheard the conversation, Ruth was talking to a fellow actor about the challenges of directing emotionally wounded performers when she said something profound: "You can't act love when your heart is bleeding." Let that sink in for a moment. She's absolutely right, isn't she? Acting requires emotional availability, the ability to tap into feelings and portray them authentically. But when you're genuinely traumatized, when your heart is actually broken and bleeding metaphorically, asking someone to pretend to be in love on camera is like asking someone with a broken leg to run a marathon, technically possible maybe, but cruel and likely to cause further damage. The outpouring of support for Maurice online evolved from simple comments into a full-blown movement of sorts. Hashtags started trending, things like "Stay Strong Maurice" and "Healing is not linear," and his mentions became filled with encouraging messages from fans, fellow actors, and even people who had never watched his movies but just felt moved by his story. People wrote things like "Stay strong, King, you'll smile again, we promise," and "Healing takes time, and that's okay." There's something beautiful and simultaneously heartbreaking about watching thousands of strangers rally around someone they've never met, offering virtual hugs and digital prayers because they recognize pain when they see it, even through a screen. It shows that despite all the trolling and negativity that social media is famous for, there's still capacity for collective compassion. Behind the scenes, away from cameras and social media posts, the whispers about Maurice's state of mind have become more detailed and more concerning. Industry insiders claim that Maurice has had at least one heart-to-heart conversation with Ruth where he opened up in ways that explained everything. According to these sources, Maurice admitted to feeling emotionally lost, like he's wandering through his own life without a map or destination. He allegedly told Ruth that fame, which he once worked so hard to achieve, now feels completely empty without inner peace, that all the movie premieres, the Instagram followers, the recognition on the streets means absolutely nothing when you go home at night and your heart feels like it's been hollowed out with a spoon. That's the kind of existential crisis that money and fame can't fix, and it's the kind of pain that requires real time and real healing to overcome. The impact of this emotional turmoil on Maurice's professional life has extended beyond just being quiet on set. Word around Nollywood is that Maurice has been actively avoiding romantic roles, particularly anything that involves deep emotional connection or intense love scenes. His management team has reportedly been selective about the scripts they're accepting on his behalf, steering clear of anything that might trigger emotional responses or force him to tap into feelings he's not ready to access. Can you imagine being so hurt that even pretending to be in love for work becomes unbearable? That's not just heartbreak, that's trauma. And it makes you wonder how many other actors and public figures are walking around with similar wounds, just better at hiding them from Ruth Codri's perceptive eye. It's important to understand Ruth's motivation in speaking out, because it would be easy to misinterpret her honesty as betrayal or gossiping about a friend's private struggles. But that's not what happened here. Ruth didn't expose Maurice out of malice, spite, or desire for attention. She spoke up out of genuine concern for someone she cares about, someone she's watched slowly deteriorate emotionally. In an industry where everyone pretends everything is always perfect, where maintaining the image is often valued over maintaining mental health, Ruth's willingness to say, "My friend is not okay," is actually revolutionary. She wanted people to understand that even the men who seem strongest, who smile for cameras and deliver powerful performances, can be crumbling internally, and that their silence about their pain doesn't mean the pain doesn't exist. Maurice's reaction to Ruth's public statement about his changed demeanor has been characteristically gracious, which somehow makes this whole situation even more poignant. According to sources close to both actors, Maurice isn't angry at Ruth for speaking out. He's not plotting revenge or feeling betrayed, which is what might happen if this were a typical celebrity feud situation. Instead, he apparently appreciates her concern and recognizes that she spoke from a place of love. He allegedly told a mutual friend, "She sees what others don't. I'll be fine. I just need time." Those words, "I just need time," carry so much weight because they acknowledge the pain while also expressing hope for healing. But they also reveal something heartbreaking. Maurice knows he's not okay, he's not pretending to be okay, he's just asking for the space to eventually get there. Social media, being the chaotic marketplace of opinions that it is, has once again split into warring factions over this entire situation. It's like the Nollywood version of Team Edward versus Team Jacob, except instead of vampires and werewolves, we're arguing about heartbreak and accountability. Team Maurice consists of people who believe Sonia has been unnecessarily harsh, that whatever happened between them doesn't justify the apparent emotional destruction of someone who clearly loved her deeply. They see Maurice as the victim of a cruel breakup, a good man brought low by a woman who won't even give him the grace of privacy in his suffering. Team Sonia, meanwhile, argues that we're only seeing one side of the story, that Maurice's pain doesn't automatically make him innocent, and that Sonia has every right to move on and speak her truth without being villainized for not wanting to get back together. At the core of this entire saga is a message that transcends celebrity gossip and touches something universal about the human experience. Pain changes people, not sometimes, not maybe, but always and inevitably. When you go through something that breaks you emotionally, you don't emerge from it as the same person who went in. You're transformed, sometimes in ways that make you stronger and wiser, sometimes in ways that make you harder and more guarded, and sometimes in ways that are simply different without being better or worse. But here's the crucial part that Ruth's statement implies: pain doesn't have to define you permanently. The Maurice Sam we're seeing right now, withdrawn and struggling, isn't necessarily the Maurice Sam who will exist 6 months or a year from now. Healing is possible, transformation is possible, but it requires time, support, and the kind of patience that our instant gratification society isn't great at offering. Ruth's own words about this situation have taken on almost poetic significance in how people are discussing mental health and heartbreak in Nollywood. She said, "Even broken stars still shine, they just shine differently." That statement has been quoted, screenshot, shared, and tattooed into the collective consciousness of everyone following this story. Because it's true, isn't it? Maurice is still working, still appearing at events, still functioning in the world. He's still shining in the sense that he's still present and still talented. But the quality of that shine has changed. It's not the bright, warm, inviting light it used to be. Now it's more like starlight that has traveled millions of miles through space, still beautiful but somehow distant and cold. The question everyone's asking is whether Maurice will eventually return to his former brightness or whether this new, different version of him is permanent. The current status of Maurice Sam's public life is a study in contrast and careful management. Publicly, he remains silent on the personal issues everyone's discussing. His Instagram posts, when they happen, are professional, movie posters, thank you messages to fans, the occasional inspirational quote that may or may not be about his situation depending on how you interpret it. He's not out here giving interviews about his heartbreak, not writing tell-all posts about what happened between him and Sonia, not defending himself against any accusations or engaging with the speculation. He's doing what many therapists would probably recommend, healing privately while maintaining professional obligations publicly. But that silence, while healthy from a mental health perspective, also leaves a vacuum that gets filled with speculation, rumors, and projections from fans who desperately want to understand what's really going on behind those increasingly sad eyes. What's particularly striking about this entire situation is how it reflects broader conversations we should be having about men, emotions, and mental health. Society teaches men from childhood to suppress emotions, to man up, to view crying as weakness and vulnerability as something to be ashamed of. Then we act surprised when men like Maurice end up suffering silently, changing fundamentally because they've internalized pain rather than processing and releasing it. Ruth Codri's observations and public concern are important not just because they're about Maurice specifically, but because they force us to acknowledge that successful, handsome, talented men can be just as emotionally destroyed by heartbreak as anyone else. Maurice has money, fame, looks, and talent, all the things society tells us should make someone immune to deep pain, and yet he's clearly struggling profoundly, proving that heartbreak is the ultimate equalizer. The story of Maurice Sam's current struggle isn't really about taking sides or determining who's right and who's wrong in a relationship none of us were actually part of. It's not even primarily about Sonia Uch, though she's obviously connected to his pain. It's about recognition, recognizing when someone is hurting, recognizing that healing isn't linear or quick, recognizing that the people we see on our screens are human beings with the same capacity for devastation that we all have. It's about understanding that someone can be at the peak of their career, surrounded by adoring fans and professional success, and still be barely holding on emotionally. And maybe most importantly, it's about the silent battles that happen behind fame, the price that sometimes gets paid for love, and the long road back to wholeness that can only be traveled one difficult day at a time. So where do we go from here? What happens next in the Maurice Sam story that has captivated Nollywood and broken hearts across social media? Honestly, that's up to Maurice and the healing journey he's on. Will he eventually return to being the vibrant, joyful person Ruth remembers? Will he emerge from this transformed into someone different but equally wonderful? Or will this pain leave permanent marks that change his approach to life, love, and his career forever? Those questions can't be answered from the outside looking in. What we can do, what Ruth Codri is asking us all to do, is extend grace, offer support, stop treating his pain as entertainment, and remember that behind every story like this is a real human being trying to figure out how to wake up every morning and keep going when their heart feels like it's been shattered beyond repair. Now here's what I need from you, because this story matters and the conversations it's starting matter even more. If Maurice Sam's struggle resonates with you, if you've ever watched someone you care about slowly fade, or if you've been that person yourself, do me a favor, share this video, hit that subscribe button, and most importantly, start the conversation. Comment below about how we can better support men who are struggling emotionally, how we can create spaces where vulnerability isn't viewed as weakness, and what message you'd send to Maurice if you could. And if you're someone dealing with heartbreak right now, whether you're famous or completely unknown, please know that what you're feeling is valid, healing is possible even when it doesn't feel like it, and asking for help isn't giving up, it's actually the bravest thing you can do. Let's change the narrative around heartbreak, mental health, and the silent battles people fight. Drop your thoughts below, show some love to everyone fighting battles we can't see, and remember, even broken stars still shine, they just shine differently. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.